you know that a lacrosse ball is the same hardness as a bowling ball running on concrete? It's just like, it's like hitting your head, your ankles with a hammer again and again and again. Like, you've already got pain, so why are you using a tool to induce even more pain? There's 250 million sensory neurons loaded into your fascias. The fascia is a giant feedback loop for the central nervous system about position, about pain, about blood flow, about touch. If you become reliant on zone 3 as your primary breathing, we are going to have jaw pain, neck pain, and pain all the way down to the hands and fingers. The ball gives you permission to let go as our body reveals what it's been holding on to.
Welcome to the Full Stack Podcast, guys. Today we have a 30-year movement veteran and best-selling author who bridges the gap between anatomy and high-performance recovery to help leaders manually override their own stress response and rebuild their biological capacity for scale. It is an honor to have Jill Miller on the show today. Jill, how are you?
I'm very good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Of course. Jill, I don't know if I ever told you this, but like, you changed my life. And so having you on the show, like, is such a pleasure. So
I mean, job done. I should just get off now and let you guys talk.
That's the pod.
yeah, don't say anything else. Don't ruin it.
We're done.
What did I do? That's what I want to know. Like, how did I change your life? This is so exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, so back in 2015, this is around the time that we met, and I was recovering. I don't remember if we had met in person before this or after this, but I had a hernia surgery. And that was 2015. And that pretty much, that ended up leading to the end of my athletic career, which was very welcome. And because I remember talking to you about the injury and talking about rebuilding my breath and understanding that my breathing mechanics were off, and that's likely what led to the injury in the first place. And talking to you and reading your book and doing all the exercises and getting your tools and doing all the exercises, I spent a lot of time rebuilding my breathing mechanics. And in doing so, it caused me to really slow down and give me time to reflect. So there's a lot of breathing into balls, which hopefully by the end of the show, people know what the hell I'm talking about.
It's rated G. It's a rated G statement he just made.
Yes. And after I was so committed to handling my recovery properly that enough time had passed where I wasn't training hard anymore, and I had enough time to reflect to go, oh, I don't even want to train. Like, I don't want to compete anymore. And it was really focusing on my breath for a long period of time that slowed down everything. And it was a level up in my yoga. You know, I had gone to yoga classes and all that before. I had read some yoga texts, but the actual practice of sitting down and breathing and focusing on my breath gave me a deeper understanding of yoga overall. And it changed my life. Thank you.
Well, I just make suggestions. You know, you made those changes, and those changes only happen internally from your attention. Right, your attention to your reflection, to your attention to your breath, your interest in what you started to discover by pulling back. So I think you're very brave to have taken a chance on some of what I was laying down, and it's just thrilling for me. I hope that meant for you less pain, more movement clarity, and it sounds like you just changed your goal. Like, you just adjusted your goal was, I just want to live in this body, rather than I want to push it to the nth degree to win or to get acclaim, you know, for performance acclaim or whatever it was you were going after with competition. And there are seasons in our life. I mean, there are definitely seasons in our life around performance and around that strivertude. But we have to also look at how we're wearing out our abilities. Oh, I'm crying. There's a running. Oh, look at this running. You made me cry.
This is a record.
Right.
We're only 2 minutes in.
Well, it's interesting that, yeah, the goals shifted, right? And before that point, I had in my mind, I had been in pain since my early 20s. Like I don't remember not being in some type of pain since, well, probably like late teens, and just training through the pain and competing, and that was really normal. Like as soon as I woke up in the morning, I'd step out of bed and it hurt, and so my body would warm up, and I just thought to myself, well, this will just be the rest of my life. It's not getting better. And I was mentally tough, where, a lot of athletes, that's a requirement, mentally tough enough to just push through the pain. But yeah, the goal changed from trying to be the best at something 12 weeks from now to the goal of I can still wipe my ass when I'm 80 without assistance. And, if I'm pulling deadlifts now, I'm deadlifting to be over 100, which means I don't need to put as much weight on the bar as possible. Which now I'm 44 now. I have no chronic pain. I feel really good in my body, and I use your Coregeous Ball every single morning. And on top of that, I've worked with a lot of military veterans through pain, and the first thing I do is I give them a Coregeous Ball.
Oh,
And
my gosh. It's
and they
I want to give you the biggest hug.
there's so many men and women who I've introduced it to that have had a lot of relief and learned a lot about their breath just from a few exercises that I showed them that I got from you. So
Amazing. Ambassador Mike, you are my ambassador.
I am.
I'll say I just learned what a Coregeous Ball is,
I've
and
got one right here.
obviously,
Sitting that way.
oh, perfect. For the viewers, to clarify the ball statement, breathing into balls, going through your content and doing the research on you, Jill, I need to get one, and for my wife as well. First, I guess, talk to us about what a Coregeous Ball is, and then we can go deeper from there.
Sure. Yeah. I specialize in sharing self-myofascial release applications. I'm involved in the fascia research community, and I try to deliver and share best practices from that space into the work that I do, the work that I write about, and the work that I teach. And so the Coregeous Ball is one of several balls that I create and use in my work. They're all soft, pliable rubber tools that you place on different parts of your body strategically to improve mobility, decrease pain, alter state, improve, like Mike was saying, breathing mechanics and so on. And the Coregeous Ball is an air-filled ball. So it's squishy and gushy, and it's your own air inside there, most likely. You blow it up yourself, the little straw that it comes with. And we blow it up to a degree that it's not taut. So it's not like a basketball or soccer ball, but it's, and this is actually a new one, so it's the seams are still showing a little bit, but like about 80% inflated, so that it has a lot of give. And that give is really important because it creates a melding of your structure and the tool, and that the tool or the ball, when you're laying against it, laying your ribs over it, or placing it on the side of your abdomen, or maybe even maneuvering it around your neck. The ball, because it's so broad and because it's so soft, it applies a very gentle pressure, a very tender touch into your body. And unlike, somebody poking you with their finger or their thumb, which can feel a little like owie, this broad pressure tends to reduce a stress response on contact. and also the gush of the ball, because it's so squishy, it doesn't make you brace against it. So it doesn't freak your body out, basically, because when your body, because you're probably rolling because your body's already in a freak out response, right? Where we've got pain, or we have emotional stress, or we're, dealing with heightened stress in general. And so the ball, because of its broad pressure, gives you permission to let go. And then we start to recognize in our body all the places that we've been unconsciously holding, which is, our central nervous system is really tapped into how we have this generalized muscle tone. And when we can release this unknown muscle tone all over our body, we start to get a therapeutic response. We start to tap into more of our parasympathetic nervous system, and all sorts of amazing, interesting things emerge. Like Mike was saying, we started to reflect, we start to feel, we start to heal as our body reveals what it's been holding on to.
And if I may, with the follow-up, because I'm sure a lot of folks listening, they're athletes, and like me, like plantar fasciitis. I'm just grab a lacrosse ball, I'm rolling my foot on it, or I have this foam roller with the spikes, and I like a deep tissue massage. And I'm like, get in there. How is this softer approach more beneficial than the aggressive approach some folks listening might be accustomed to?
It doesn't have to hurt to work. It doesn't have to hurt to work. Like, it's just that simple. Like, you've already got pain. So why are you using a tool to induce even more pain? We want to start a new dialogue with our nervous system that light touch or tender touch, that doesn't mean it's not deep. I mean, in fact, in research, and I talk about this in my book, when they use a soft medium compared to a hard medium, so they were comparing, this is Leonid Bloom and Mark Driscoll, by the way, we're comparing the inducement of pressure into tissue. And so they used wood, they used like a bone, they used tire rubber, and then they used soft, squishy, like rubber. I can't remember the lightest squishy one, but it's kind of like my yoga tune-up balls. This is the Cortisol Ball yoga tune-up balls, or a solid squishy rubber. But what they found was that the stress transfer, and by the way, when we're touching into a body with a tool, this is the transfer of that physical stress from the object. So we call this a stress transfer medium. Did you know that, folks? Massage tools are actually a stress transfer medium. Yeah, in the engineering space. So they had these are like engineer guys, and they're looking at this as it relates to tissue. So the stress transfer medium that had the softest amount, that was the softest tool, actually had the most tissue displacement. That's really important. So the lacrosse ball, these harder, but did you know that a lacrosse ball is the same hardness as a bowling ball? It's the exact same physical hardness, right? Just like when you run on asphalt, it's very different than running on concrete. Like, what would you rather run on? Asphalt or concrete?
Asphalt.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the tar, it's elastic. Whereas the concrete is just like, it's like hitting your ankles with a hammer again and again and again. The same thing with massage tools. So we want to use something that our body doesn't naturally have to brace against. Like, I don't want to just tolerate the tool. I want to have a therapeutic response. And so I and you, every athlete, every individual needs to find that implement where they feel a melting quality, a merging of tool, nervous system, and the individual. So while I am going to continue to tell you, like, a soft tool is supreme, I also acknowledge there may be those deviant bodies out there where a harder tool is where they actually feel the safest, they feel the most comfort. But if, when you're rolling, you find other parts of your body going on lockdown, for example, you start rolling, you stop breathing, right? You're like, you're holding your breath to grin and bear it. Or your body starts to make a fist just involuntarily. And I see this all the time in classrooms with people who are new to doing self-myofascial release. They'll get done on the balls, their eyes will pop open, and their hands will like go into like a state of shock. That's not a therapeutic response. That's a sympathetic overflow. And so we need to address those overflow symptoms by changing our approach. Maybe we go to the wall instead of laying on the floor. Maybe we start with a different body part, or maybe we change our ball. Maybe we use the Coregeous ball instead of a yoga tune-up ball or an alpha ball or something like that. So soft is supreme because it creates the most likelihood that you're not going to have an overblown autonomic nervous system battle with the tool, battle with yourself and the tool.
Mm. Yeah, I found that to be, I think my mindset when I was first introduced to it was it like this, almost like I didn't even recognize that it was like working. I remember I was living in San Diego, and I came up and did one of your classes in LA, and it was great. I left so relaxed and open and everything, but I was still like, that point in my journey, it was kind of like some waiting, and it's like I felt like I'm just waiting to whatever. And at the end, I was feeling really good. So obviously I was experiencing something. But I think that this desire to really dig in, and this intensity of like, if what hurt me was intense, I need like intensity to fix it. Or we may associate intensity with speed of recovery. Like, how fast can I get this knot out? And like my wife, at times she'll be like, oh, my shoulder. She has me work on her a lot. She goes, my shoulder. And I great. And I start digging up at her pec or something. And the overall like knowledge of the average person, like they think that it's one thing, it's actually another. And it's also an approach that may be soft that gets you the quickest results. Because I think a lot of times we're just in a hurry.
Yeah, speed is definitely speed tends to also create a little bit more guarding in the body, and then you're not able to get to the tissue target. So when we go really fast with our rolling, that can also ignite some unconscious muscle spindle reflex, a little bit of guarding. And so if what you're trying to get at is very deep in the body, you really do have to slow way down and then use other strategies to help like inoculate or anesthetize the nervous system. And that's where deep, slow breathing comes in, and also novel positions, especially floor-based positions or positions that can take advantage of the baroreceptor reflex and gravity, so that it kind of flips on our vagus nerve or parasympathetic dominant state. So there is an art to the application, and most massage therapy is done on tables for that reason, also to take advantage of gravity and getting your postural muscles out of the equation, because there's nothing like battling against your postural tone while you're trying to go all the way to the bone or whatever it is you're trying to do with your tool.
Can you speak to like my wife's got tight neck, and I release the pec.
Okay.
And then she feels like it's a miracle that, like, she thinks I'm a genius or something. But I mean, I've just been exposed to things long enough to I just noticed this. But can you speak to, sometimes it's not what you think it is? Like, if you have tight shoulders, you may not need a shoulder rub. It might be something else.
Yeah. So, well, because there's so many questions, there's so many places I could take this. But like, let's take the example of this neck relaxation that she gets when her pec is released. So, in this example, we can think about the upper cross syndrome, which Vladimir Janda, who was oh my gosh, I can't remember which country he came from, like Bulgaria. I'm going to get fried on that one. Anyway, this describes a syndrome where there are muscles on the front of the body that tend to overwork and become hypertonic from overuse. And so that includes the pectoralis muscles, especially the pec minor. And these are muscles that are pulling your shoulder around and forward. And so with that chronic tension or that chronic overuse, we can get shortening of the connective tissues, the fascial tissues that are affiliated with those muscle fibers. And what that will do is it will alter the position of the scapula, right? So the scapula will roll around and forward and it'll probably be lifted up. And that, my friends, is a direct line trapezius, which supports the neck. However, if we think about also why might my pecs be especially tight, that could be from the chronic position of phone holding or computer staring, other things that affect the carriage of the neck. But I will create multiple adaptations to keep my head on my body. And so with the tension building in the pecs, I don't, and my head tending to be carried forward by habit and also by the fascial tension in the pecs, I'm going to have some screaming tension in the back of my neck to keep my head up. And so a lot of trigger points in the neck, especially in the trapezius, can be attributed to those muscles firing like crazy to try to stay upright. So overfiring of those muscles, and then they get fatigued and they get metabolically exhausted, and this leads to, can lead to chronic neck pain. But the problem is I can try to put my head back on top of my body, but if I put my head back on top of my body and my pecs are still short, I only have it on my body temporarily. I need to open this up so that I can resolve the scapular position so that my head then can be reset. But when I'm talking about resetting my head and neck, I also still need to address muscles on the front of the neck, front of the cervical spine, as well as on the back and sides of the cervical spine. So it's more complex than that, but relieving the tissue here gives my neck options that it didn't have before. So that's like one possibility. So the other possibility, I came across a paper a few weeks ago that was super cool. And it was in my subject matter, so it really stuck, which is they had folks in Tehran, this is weeks before what's happening in Iran is happening now, and I hope all the researchers are okay. But they were testing out rolling the foot and the calf on balls and foam rollers for people with chronic neck pain. And then they had just a control group that I think just sat there. So they had people with chronic neck pain rolling their foot and rolling their calf. And then they had the group that had chronic neck pain, and it was age matched and sex matched in both groups. And the people who rolled their foot and rolled their calf for 6 weeks, their neck pain significantly improved. Whereas the other group, nothing changed about their neck pain. They never rolled their neck. Nobody's rolling their necks in this study. And so one of the theories, there's a couple of theories. One theory is that you've got, if we look at the mapping of fascia or the tensional relationship of fascia, you could argue there is a connection from the bottom of the foot to the neck. We can really argue in any direction the connections because it is all connected. But that potentially loosening connective tissue of the foot and calf may have created some more slack or opportunity for the neck to rest better on the head. But what they think probably happened is that, rolling, when you're first rolling, it can be uncomfortable. And, like the first time you roll, you're like, ow, that kind of hurts. And then the next time you roll, it's a little more tolerable. And the next time you roll, it's a little more tolerable. And so we start to build a pain tolerance. We start to alter our own pain threshold. And what they think happened, potentially, is that the rolling ended up altering completely their body's entire relationship to discomfort, to pain and distress that used to be the neck was the harbinger of that, but they think it just tamped down ultimately their pain and pressure tolerance all over their body, and therefore their neck was just less of an aggravating thing over time because of the
So
foot rolling.
they weren't measuring posture, they were just measuring pain.
No postural measurements, just subjective pain questionnaires.
Mm.
Yeah. But it's interesting, right? Because the other group had no improvement.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to see that with postural changes. I mean, yeah, I've definitely had things release in one side of my body, and then where I wasn't aware that something was tight over here, it gets released, and all of a sudden, the somewhere on another part of my body just relaxes.
Mm-hmm.
Or like one was like uh getting a jaw released from inside, and then all of a sudden neck pain goes away, chronic tingling in the hands go away.
Yes.
And
Yeah. And so, I mean, I would say, I mean, my opinion, it's both and. It's both the tensional network and it's the neural network. You can't separate them. So I think it's like, it's really interesting. So, but I'm
also,
doing
I mean,
it. I'm not going to roll my foot.
I mean, anytime I roll, anytime I'm using these tools, I mean, I go in a parasympathetic state as well, which could just signal to the entire nervous system to relax a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Yes.
I did want to mention something Mike said earlier about being in pain and thinking this is going to be for the rest of my life. And this is according to the CDC and the National Institute of Health, where about 24.3% of Americans, or 60 million people, could be in some form of general chronic pain. And for someone who had knee pain and a physician told me at 28, oh, well, just pop some aspirin, this is how it is. That answer is not good enough for a lot of people, a lot of the listeners here. And you mentioned some of the relationship from the fascia in the foot, loosening that up, how it could help the neck. I'd love for you to speak a little bit, I guess, on Fascia Lasagna and how loosening it up and hydration would do wonders for some folks.
I think I have described fascia like lasagna. I can't remember. I mean, I talk about it so often, but it's probably in my book. Was it in the book, Ted?
It was in the research.
Okay. So yeah, let's talk about the fascia lasagna. So not everybody has this perspective, but I like to talk about the different layers of fascia and the ability for them to move about. So backing up a little bit, your body is comprised of this network of connective tissue known as fascia. And we find it developing with us embryologically. You start developing fascia when you're 50 cells old, but also evolutionarily speaking, we have carried fascia with us since we were sea squirts, and then reptiles, and then primates, and then now humans. And so our fascias have grown along with us as we've evolved. You're not going to find any structure in the body without some sort of fascia. It's arguable that the brain itself doesn't have fascia, but it does indeed have different connective tissues, but maybe not specifically fascia. But fascia is a network of collagen and elastin and abundant fluids. It's also a very cell-rich structure, and it is packed with sensory neurons. There's 250 million sensory neurons loaded into your fascias at different levels of the body. So I'm going to talk about the different levels, the different layering, the lasagna of the fascia. The most superficial of your layers of fascia is within the skin. You have a membrane. It's a double membrane known as superficial fascia, and you can find it easily just by pinching your belly fat. And know that when you're pinching your belly fat or your forearm fat, you're also pinching the membranous fascia, the superficial fascia layer that's in there. The superficial fascia is anchored to the skin through these little tent poles called ranunculus cutis. So we have these almost like claw-like collagen pins all over from the skin into that superficial fascia. And then underneath the superficial fascia in your skin, you also have these ranunculus cutis that reach down and hook into the next layer of fascia, which is known as the deep fascia. A deep fascia is like the most popular fascia. It's like the hip functional fascia, because when we look at deep fascia, it's very, very clearly tracking through patterns in the whole body. So I think the easiest way to visualize deep fascia, if any of you listeners are familiar with the anatomy trains, which is Tom Meyer's perspective on fascia, you can see the superficial back line. You can see that there's fascia from just above the orbit to the eyes, through the skull, down the back of the head, splitting across each gluteal, down the hamstrings, all the way into the plantar fascia. So we have these gigantic, thick, almost duct tape-like projections of fascia that transmit force from structure to structure to structure. And we have these in every plane of motion, and we have these wrapping around groupings of muscles. In between the superficial and the deep fascia, we have an intervening layer known as loose fascia. However, loose fascia is all over your body, and the loose fascia allows different fascial layers to glide upon each other. And that's very important. We need to have glide so that our fascial tissues allow for motion amongst muscles and motion within muscles. So then let's get into an even deeper investigation of what's happening within fascia within muscle. Because we have a lot of loose fascia within muscle, but we also have new layers. So when we have a given muscle, I was looking for an elastic to show you guys. Oh, here we go. Let's say your quadriceps muscle. When we go all the way down to the muscle fiber level, every muscle fiber of that quadricep is wrapped by its own little fascial envelope. And that little fascial envelope is called the endomysium. So at the level of the muscle cell, every muscle cell you have is wrapped in its own little fascial layer, little fascial sleeve. And the equivalent visual of this is if you peel an orange all the way and you get all the way into the individual cells, there's a little cellulose wrapping around the juice. And if you just go and you squirt it, the juice comes out, and then you're left with this little tiny diaphanous cellulose envelope. The same thing is true structurally of the way the muscle cell is organized with its endomysium. Yeah. But then when we have groups of muscle cells, they are bundled together inside of your quadricep, inside of your muscles in general. And then we have what's known as a fascicle, right? We have fascicles within our muscles. I would call it a fascicle because that's why it's a fascicle. It's fascia. And at this level, we call this the perimysium. So this is perimysial fascia. Now, by the way, the muscle cells within the perimysium, they have the ability to glide. Right. And the reason they have the ability to glide, by the way, is, sorry, the mom group is popping up on my computer now. They have glide because of there's a loose fascia relationship here. And there's also lubricant within here called hyaluronan. So hyaluronan is a very, very important grease within the fascial extracellular matrix, within the liquids of the fascia. So we have muscle cells in their endomysium. We have groups of muscle cells, which gives us perimysium of the fascicle. And then when we have groups of fascicles that come together, pretend I did this with this other hand. But we have groups of fascicles that come together, and they're conjoined. They're all wrapped together by another fascial envelope known as the epimysium. And the epimysium is also synonymous with deep fascia, which I already named, deep fascia. But this is how we get the continuity from cell to skin and everything in between. So we have fascia upon fascia surrounding structure, transmitting forces from structure to structure, both in series and laterally. And these fascias that are a part of the muscle, we call that myofascia. So any fascias that are of a muscle are myofascial structures, myofascial bits. But those myofascials are very important for transmitting force and signaling in that manner. We also have fascia that is even deeper because it's part of our organ system. It's part of our C-squared system. We have visceral fascia. So we have fascias that wrap around our organs, and those fascias contain a liver, right? They contain a spleen. They contain the small intestines, and all of these, they contain the lungs. And these organs all must have movement about one another. If they don't, we start to have some very severe consequences. And we can find this after hernia surgeries, after appendectomies, after C-sections. We can have agglomerations or bonding of visceral fascia to one another and creating visceral adhesions, calcifications, and inappropriate stiffness that can lead to, metabolic problems and all sorts of pain and nonsense.
Yeah, so the fascia is like in everything. Everything. And
by that long monologue.
I've
But we didn't talk, there's some other fascia we didn't talk about. Which is the neural fascia. Maybe the brain doesn't have fascia, but the nerves certainly do. The nerves are wrapped in layers of fascia.
In the brain.
No, not in the brain. No, you got your myelin. No. We're talking about the peripheral nervous system.
Okay.
Right. So when you're,
I found out, I was like, oh, this is new to me.
Oh, sir. Spirits come out of the spine. It's fascia that is the pathway for the nerves to be able to carry on to where they're going to. So we have what's known as neural fascia, and there are actually entire systems built around helping glide within nerves. So like active release technique, ART. Love a good ART practitioner because they can help free up nerves that are being strangled by the fascia that they live in.
Yeah. Mm. How long has fascia been taken seriously? I remember hearing there was a period of time where
is it being seriously?
Well,
you would, in my algorithm, I have two. There's like literally the fascia haters, the anti-fascia, and then there's the fascia researchers where we're like, why are people being so weird about
fascia haters? Who's a fascia hater? What are you talking about?
Look at all the research. So,
well, I heard at some point that people are doing surgeries and cutting up cadavers and for a long time the scientific community just said it's just we've heard this over and over again that the same thing with exosomes. It's like, oh, this is just waste material, or we don't know why the fascia is here and we're not curious about it. And then there was at some moment in time somebody goes, well, the fascia behaves differently in a live person versus a cadaver. I think shortly after somebody dies, basically all the fluids leave the fascia. And so I think that a lot of people like in medical school aren't getting a proper introduction to it, and it's not being studied properly. And so when were some of these breakthroughs around this?
So you got to look back to the early 2000s. The first Fascia Research Congress was in, I think it was 2005. 2005.
This is so new. This is what, 20 years ago?
Well, there was fascia research prior to that, but finally people from across the globe were finding each other and said, we need to actually pool our knowledge together. And originally this knowledge pool was really around mechanical forces, was really around, movement, posture, like you said, the relationship of gravity, but and pain relief. But imaging is what's changed it all, because now we can look, not me, I don't have an electron microscope, but the researchers that are working in the microscopy area of this can now see the neural network within fascial layers. That's why we've had this 250 million sensory nerve ending fact. That's like insane. The fascia is a giant feedback loop for the central nervous system, about position, about pain, about blood flow, about touch. There's so many different aspects on the neural side, but also it's so cell rich. They keep discovering new cell types that both propagate fascia and cannibalize fascia, but also that traffic through. Some of the more recent research that's super interesting to me is the discovery of immune cell trafficking and immune cell resident cells in different fascial layers. Like, who knew that there are all of these mast cells living in your superficial fascia, like just tankers parked there waiting for a danger signal to then degranulate and give you a histamine response. Like, they're living in the superficial fascia. So we have so many different cell-rich environments in the fascial tissues. And in 2000, oh my gosh, don't make me quote dates anymore. I literally cannot remember. I think it was 2012, maybe 2012. Carla Stecco and her lab in Padua discovered a completely new cell type called the fasciocyte. And the fasciocyte is the cell that produces hyaluronan. Hyaluronan, look, you guys, if you're taking hyaluronic acid, you are invested in hyaluronan as a molecule that belongs in the body. Eating it is probably not improving your fascial glide, but this is the synovium of your fascia. You don't just have synovial fluid in your joints, you have it all over your connective tissues, because every single muscle structure in your body must glide. It's not just movement happening at the joint. We have motion happening across muscles as movements occur. So we can look at fascial relationships of muscle to muscle as a soft joint. These soft joints must also have their own lubricants. And that's why rolling is so important, because the rolling action creates shear, it creates stretch, it creates challenges for these soft tissues to maintain their elasticity so that we have better muscle function, proper muscle function about an area. So the microscopy has given us insights into this world that truly was unknown before. And so it is this incredible frontier. And now there's papers in Journal of Anatomy, and oh my gosh, in what was I just reading? Literally, oh God, I was reading one on the pathophysiology of fascia in hypermobility syndromes. I can't remember what journal that was in, but like crazy high-level journals printing these papers on the physiology and the cellular anatomy of fascia.
Random question. When you mentioned the shear and the fluid within the fascia, how does hydration play into that? Because there's a lot of people who are dehydrated and they're not properly drinking water. How does that play into the function of the fascia?
Well, hyaluronan is a water goblin. It loves grabbing hold of water molecules in order for you to have the right viscosity in your tissue. So if you're dehydrated and you're lacking in, available water, your hyaluronan will start to bond to itself. And that's where we start to get really gluey, stuck, sticky connective tissue. And this can really lead to a lot of pain and movement imbalances. So hydration is super important.
Let me drink my water.
Yeah. Drink water.
And it's also not just like drinking it, but it's also then like manipulating your tissue so that your hyaluronan has the free floating water to grab a hold of, right? So we can just sit in our desk all day and drink water and not move. That's going to be you're going to feel really stiff.
Yeah. There's, first thing in the morning, I drink some electrolytes that are intended for first thing in the morning. And then I roll out. And then midday, I'll grab you familiar with the David Weck, the Weck rope? You familiar with that, Jill?
I don't have one, but I've certainly seen it.
Yeah, I play with that in between work sessions, and it's got this unwinding effect to it.
Yeah.
Some of this like even if a very lightweight rotational movements I've noticed have like really untied things. and then I use a chi machine at night. Are you familiar with those?
Probably. What, describe it to me?
Chi machine is it's a device. It's about, that big, and you put your ankles in it, and it waves your ankles back and forth.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
do
yeah.
that. I do that before bed. I don't know exactly what's happening. I mean, obviously there's something going on with the fascia. My back's on the ground, my feet are waving, and so my
Uh-huh.
everything's being, moved
It's
across
like
the
making
ground.
you into a slurry. Yeah, I have
It's
a, I can't remember. I have a little fascial oscillation from the feet that I have in Body by Breath book that's inspired by, yeah, it's like a cheap chi machine because you have to use your own body to do it. But yes, that's a very good idea. And also what's nice about that is you get this really great like skeleton movement. Like you can feel your inner like shark just shifting
yeah.
inside of your fluid body. Oh, I love that feeling.
It's a bit snaky is how I think about it.
Yes.
It's like almost like I got like a kundalini thing going on without having to do any work. It's just kind of
Yeah.
waving me for me. Um, have you heard of? I mean,
Where's the coffee? There's no coffee in that day. You just described like there's no coffee.
matcha.
Oh, okay.
Matcha. I coffee dehydrates me.
Oh my God. I get
That
euphoric.
was
I just love it.
that was brought to my attention in 2005.
What about coffee ice
And
cream?
I look, I was in Italy this past summer, and I definitely had I had a few affogatos. So if
Delicious.
y'all don't know what that is, just go look it up. It'll change your life. I mean, you got to
Change it
get it in Italy though.
as much as balls.
Um,
Avocado.
yeah, if you take anything from the show, use your balls and drink affogatos or eat them. No, I've been witness to this. I've heard a lot of people say this. I haven't had this happen myself, but I've been around it enough where people are having some type of fascial release, and memories will come up from like forgotten memories uh, will emerge during a session, unprompted, no expectation it would happen. And I've heard some people they theorize that there's, I think most people consider, oh, all your memories are in your brain. And there really isn't solid research that suggests that like there's a storage of actual memories in the brain. And some people think that maybe the fascia is playing a role in emotion and memories and all that. Have you heard that? What's your take on it?
I get this question every day. And
Okay, so it's not that strange.
no, but it's a fever pitch of this question right now. Because I think there's a lot of fascia fictions being trafficked, especially on Instagram, that can't necessarily be explained well in an Instagram post or Instagram copy. And your everything's connected. Your vasculature is embedded in fascial tissues. Your musculature is anchored in fascial tissues. Your nervous system, your peripheral nervous system, anchored in fascial tissues. So fascia, like I think fascia is kind of like getting maybe glorified as like the thing you need to release in order to have an emotional experience, and it's really not true. You are a whole person, and don't forget they're touching your skin when they're trying to target your fascia. They are
Mm-hmm.
again they're touching your nervous system when they're touching the body, whether it's a practitioner working on you or you're working on yourself. I see emotions arising all the time, both from myself when I practice, as well as the students and and I'm talking students from paupers to princes, from, Academy Award winners to just Joe of the streets. Your body is an emotion rich entity, and your brain is an emotion rich entity. And because there are so many of these sensory neurons within the fascial system, um, and it's not fully understood. Right now, fascia is getting the attribution for being like, oh, that's the highway to your emotion. But, your breath is also a highway to your emotion. Um, and yeah, there are certain nerves of the face, certain ways that you can palpate the face and the neck that often are a fast track towards emotional reactions, whether that is grief or whether that is a hedonic thing, like a very pleasurable or happy, eliciting happiness or euphoria. So I think it's a little bit of a trap that we don't have a full grasp on, but I'm reluctant to say, oh, all the emotions are in your fascia and all the traumas in your fascia, because that's kind of what's selling. In terms of my algorithm, I cannot believe what I'm getting served these days. And in the background, on me and the other folks who, work on trying to improve the dissemination of fascial research, we're very, very cautious, especially because we want to honor the what is known. And we're not in the psychotherapy space. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not, I'm not a mental health person. That's not my space. But I fully acknowledge and support when we start tapping into ourselves in these very unusual and supportive ways, it's likely your body is going to speak to you. It's going to reveal things to you that you have been glossing over because you haven't tapped in. You haven't had the time to slow down, reflect, and feel. But I just don't think
we're
can.
talking.
Yeah, I think we're getting into the realm, and I did have this question, and Mike alluded to it earlier, of slowing down long enough. And obviously, when it comes to not just rolling, but the breath, we're looking at interoception and as well as scanning the body and learning how to feel the body, the aches, and even more so slowing down long enough to identify what's going on. Speak a little bit to the breath practice with this and how that interoception could improve when we slow down and we take the time to actually take care of ourselves.
Yes, I love talking about interoception. So just to define interoception for listeners. So interoception refers to our body's ability to perceive its physiology. So proprioception is our ability to discern our body's position, in our physical position in stillness or motion. And so that has to do with a lot of nerve endings, mechanosensors that are located in joints and in different muscles. So we can tell our position. Like you can feel how the degree of your knee bend right now if I say pay attention to your knee. But if I switch and I say pay attention to the sensations arising from your small intestine, your inner ear might go, what? But if you start to really slow down and try to tune out distractions, you might start to feel the bubbles or gurgles from within the viscera. So when we talk about interoception, some of the obvious stuff are feelings of hunger, satiety, digestion, signals from our internal organs. The movement of air is in that, the movement of blood. So, really easy interoceptive test is to bring your hand to feel the pulse somewhere on your body. So this would be considered a faculty of interoception. And some people have a higher acuity of perceiving their physiology than others. And you can actually test this out. I have a test in my book on the interoception score, and that's from a researcher named Hugh Critchley out of England. I think it's fascinating to recognize, like, oh, do I feel myself, or am I disconnected from the feelings of my inner self? But there is some correlation with people with who have good interoceptive acuity are highly intelligent. No, I'm kidding. That's not necessarily true. That interoceptive acuity, with very high interoceptive acuity, are actually more prone to panic attacks because they're feeling their heart rate all the time. And when the heart rate starts to go up and their breath gets very shallow, it can be frightening. So they're they're like skirting closer to feelings of anxiety, right? When we feel our body's inner state. But one can learn how to navigate that and then to also manipulate that so that you are not a victim to your body's state, but you can work with it. And so breath is one of those steering wheels that we can typically, if we're training to learn how to do breath mechanics, like if we go back to the beginning of the conversation, like Mike was talking about, if we learn how to improve our breath mechanics and the different zones of respiration, we can really start to adjust our breath pace and our breath range in ways that can be very, very helpful for adjusting our stress state. And so I think that's one of the best ways that we can use breathing practice as an interoceptive intervention for our health and wellness.
Yeah. What are those levels of respiration you just mentioned really quick, if you wanted to break that down?
Yeah, I'd love to break it down. So in Body by Breath, I talk about 3 different zones of respiration. So there's 3. So the primary muscle of respiration is your diaphragm. Hands down, it is the god of respiration in your body. It is a central node of movement. Yes, if I had to pick one muscle, that'd be it. Some people say it's the heart. I'm going to go for the respiratory diaphragm as my favorite muscle, because it's fascially connected to so many different tissues, structures, and systems within your body. It is the main squeeze. But we can use it as a demarcation line, and we can identify 3 primary zones of respiration. So zone 1, I say, occurs below the diaphragm. So if you take your hands and you bring them to your waist, and you're holding on to your waist, and you breathe in a way that your waist expands, even your thumb can hopefully feel your lower back expanding, and your fingers can feel the abdomen expanding. And if your proprioceptive and interoceptive acuity are spot on, you might even feel that your pelvic floor distends with a zone 1 inhalation. So a zone 1 inhalation is a breath where the diaphragm goes down on inhale, which is its normal action. It's contracting when it goes down, and then it relaxes as it flies back up. And so we have a shape change in the gut area. And a zone 1 breath is our most calm state relaxation type of breathing. It's a very parasympathetic type of breath, and we can use this to really quiet things down. But if there's something in the way, like a really tight belt, or you're trying to look tight, you're trying to pull your abs in because you want to look skinny, then we're going to have a really hard time getting our diaphragm to go down. Or maybe we have scar tissue from a hernia surgery or from an appendectomy or a C-section. And so maybe we don't really have an ease of movement in that zone 1 because of scar tissue, right? In fascial agglomeration, fascial mishaps in that area. And it's not uncommon. Or maybe we've overtrained. Maybe we have poor elasticity down there because we have just done so much overtraining in the abs to get a 6-pack or a 10-pack or whatever there. And in that case, if I have a difficult time getting a zone 1 breath, I'm going to default a little bit higher. I'm going to go into my rib cage, into my zone 2. And so a zone 2 breath is a breath where the diaphragm works with the intercostals to upwardly rotate the ribs on inhale and to downwardly rotate them on exhale. And you can feel this for yourself. You can bring your hands to the sides of your rib cage and just push in hard and try to breathe against your hands, and you'll feel your ribs raising up against them. So this is an intercostal diaphragm breath. And when we do a breath like this, we actually don't get quite as much air into the lungs. It's a little bit of a shallower breath. It's a more sympathetically attuned breath. So it's a more activating breath. It's also the breath we use robustly within training. We must. You don't want to lift a heavy barbell off the floor and not have your abs braced, right? So we're going to be using a lot of zone 2 breathing in our heavy lifts so that we're protecting the SI joints and protecting the lumbar spine, right? We have to brace in order to produce power. So zone 2 is used in sport, and it's used smartly. And then obviously afterwards, you're going to get down into a zone 1 or a zone 1-2 combination breath, which is really an ideal breath for total lung saturation. But if we live in zone 2 perpetually because we are very upregulated and we're very, intense and all the time and on all the time, we'll often deflect into a high stress zone, which is zone 3. And in zone 3, we're using muscles of the face, neck, shoulders to get breath in, right? And you can see that in the asthmatic. You can see that in the panic attack. You can see that in fright. You can see that in shock. But you can also see it temporarily in high delight, like in orgasm, right? So zone 3 is not a diabolical zone, but we use it briefly or we use it in case of emergency. If you become reliant on zone 3 as your primary breathing, and mind you, I never said the diaphragm was a zone 3. It's a little bit used, but mostly it's these accessory muscles of respiration. If we're using these accessory muscles of respiration to be our dominant way of breathing, we are going to have jaw pain, neck pain, shoulder pain, back pain, arm pain, elbow pain, pain all the way down to the hands and fingers. So we have to do everything we can, really, to tamp down the overrun of stress in zone 3 and try to exhume our ability to have full range of motion in zone 1 and zone 2 with our breathing.
So when I think about breath and these different zones, one thing could be a physical restriction, like you were saying, wearing a belt too tight or having had a surgery. And now we're breathing in zone 2 or zone 3. And, those cause hormonal responses, right? So if you're breathing really shallow, then you're going to pump more cortisol. And I know, and then also I've noticed when people are just, it's like a circular feedback. There's a feedback loop happening where like I'm perceiving psychologically, I'm perceiving stress. One of the things I talk to about with clients is, you ever catch yourself holding your breath when you're checking your email? That email comes through you that you didn't, something's not going right, or you go to check your bank account and you notice that you're holding your breath. What's happening there? What's happening hormonally? What's happening with the neurotransmitters? And then you get a cortisol dump, for example, and then now it's signaling to your body to breathe short again, which I think could lead to what you were talking about before, which is a panic attack, where you get stuck in this loop where it's hard to get out of the tunnel vision of the moment and see the bigger picture and relax and breathe well again. So I think about it in both parts. And I've coached clients so many times where I'm talking to them, and I'm talking about, I remember this from my personal training days 20 years ago. See, when I'm coaching somebody about their business now, and in both cases, I'll catch them holding their breath when they should be breathing nice and low and slow. And so, aside from using the Courgeous Ball, because, I know that using the Courgeous Ball in the morning was one of the steps that helped me become more aware of my breath throughout the rest of the day. I started being aware of my breath while I'm doing other things. I mean, I've noticed that it's a skill to develop, to be aware of my breath while I'm also focused on other stuff. What do you think about what I shared overall? And what do you think about improving your awareness just generally throughout the day? Can you stop yourself and just take a breath?
Absolutely. I mean, you don't have to stop doing anything. I mean, the breathing happens automatically for you upwards of 23,000 times a day. So you can be listening to this podcast right now and split your attention to be aware of how it is you're breathing. But I think it's also interesting when we start to pay attention to our breathing. Breathing likes to happen in secret. It likes to be automatic. And if you haven't trained yourself to to do breathing exercise, your breath is going to become very self-conscious when you start to pay attention to it. And it's likely to have stage fright. And it's going to be very difficult to take a deep breath initially for a long time. Have you noticed that when you're trying to like teach breathing to other people, they can get very have almost like a breath anxiety because it hasn't been exposed. It hasn't been brought to their full attention. This is one of the reasons why I use tools, because the tools end up manipulating the lungs and the fascial tissues in all of these different muscles that I mentioned. And so we have these involuntary autonomic surges that give us accelerated parasympathetic dominant opportunities. And all of a sudden, people just let go. They'll let out this crazy involuntary long exhale, and it'll surprise them. And so that's one of the reasons why I incorporate the use of self-myofascial tools in conjunction with breath work, because I do find that, and I watch a lot of breath teachers using zone 3 muscles in the context of breath training. And I don't think that is a great place to start. I think people really need to become aware of this compensation pattern, because this is very metabolically costly to breathe with your shoulders and to breathe with your neck and breathe with your mouth. We need to be trained out of that. And so what I tend to do is I get people to do rolling using the other balls that I have. This is the yoga tune-up balls, and we'll place them like on zone 3 muscles, like the traps, like the pecs. And there's other sizes of balls that we use, as the alpha twins, and then the plus balls. But I'll also use them in conjunction with novel positions that advantage the relaxation response. And so a lot of that is ground-based stuff, or getting the head below the heart and the pelvis above the heart. So we create what I call a gentle slope. And this is really, I have found, the best way to coax people into becoming aware of their breathing patterns, because the balls give you biofeedback. The balls give you biofeedback about the locations where your breathing habits are dominant, but they're also doing therapy on you while you're becoming aware of it. So you get this like double effect. Because I can tell people, while you're driving in your car, just try to extend your exhale a little bit. And a lot of people did get really caught up in that. They feel like they're a failure at it. And so sometimes we have to bypass the actions of breathing and trick the body into a better breathing pattern, and then slowly titrate awareness around that. That has been very successful for me. That is really what a lot of my programming is around. I think the simplest thing, obviously the balls they're an intervention. They're a big thing. It's like, you're going to have balls. But if you don't, and you're just like, you can use tennis balls, you can use rolled up pillows, fold up pillows that you sleep with, or roll up a towel. These are other things that we can use. We can use a rolled up yoga mat. A rolled up yoga mat is a great substitution for a Coregeous ball. And I think
I travel with the Coregeous ball. I probably deflated and inflated that thing 100 times.
Yes. And the act of inflating it is a great resistance breath exercise. Like, there's even more cool complexities that we can get into. There's a whole series of exercises with exhale resistance and inhale resistance, because it comes with a little straw. So we can really play around with the airway training with that as well, in a very lo-fi way. But you can do this with straws. You can do this with shakes or smoothies. You can blow bubbles into honey, things like that. These are other great ways to trick the inspiratory and expiratory muscles into allowing you an easier breath. So a lot of that, I talk about that in the book as well. But what I was going to say, so I think one way to coax yourself into calmer breathing, and by the way, slow, deep breathing is in the literature. It's just hands down, it's such a corrective for our high stress life and high stress state, but it's just shown again and again in meta-analysis and systematic review. Slow, deep breathing is the way to go. And the zone is 5 to 7 breaths per minute is really what is that zone. But again, it can be very hard for people to get to that if breathing exercise makes them uncomfortable. But one way I think to get there without all the tools and all the stuff that I'm suggesting is just try to make the next breath you have, try to make your exhale longer than the one that you breathed prior. Can you just make the next exhale that happens a little longer than the breath that you breathed prior? And then your next exhale, make it a little longer. And so you can get into a cadence like that. And that will create a natural vacuum that will help you to imbibe, to inspire a larger inhalation. And that's one way that we can build up a tolerance for longer, slower breathing. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. That's way better than just slow down your breath or breathe fewer times in a minute. I have a question around breath work because I've been around a lot of breath work.
I bet you have. I mean, Mike, I always think of Mike as just like, he is the funkiest. Like, he is going to try all the stuff. Like, I just send him out there in the wild. He will try all the weirdest stuff and come back and report.
I did. I tried all. I recommend about 20% of what I tried.
That's so cool. And honestly, I am a beneficiary of that because you had the balls and the courage to try what I offer, which is weird. I give you that, but it works.
Yeah. Yeah. And regarding breathwork, I did notice in one particular breathwork community that people were developing lower back issues, and curious your opinion on how, like, if we're laying down to do breath, maybe we're doing some big breath work, some like Stan Grof, like holotropic breath work, or Wim Hof, or some of these like really big ones, because people like to do that. People go to retreats and they run into this. I mean, I like it. I do like some DMT breath work on occasion, which you have to get that zone 3 going, but only on occasion, how should we be positioning our bodies, whether we're sitting or we're laying down? Is there any things we should do or don't do?
I have a lot of different answers for that, but this particular breath community, are they sitting? What is their habit of?
They're laying flat.
They're laying flat. Are they allowing their knees to be bent?
No. Well, no one's coaching them.
Mm-hmm.
No one's coaching the position. They're just saying lay down.
Yeah.
I have, over time, there's been suggestions to bend your knees and let them rest against each other.
Yeah, there's a mechanical reason why their low backs are hurting. Do you want me to show you on the skeleton?
Yes, please.
I literally.
That's what we're here for. Get the skeleton. What's it? What's their name?
This is Osteo Nuevo.
Osteo Nuevo. I had to have
Hola.
It's a man for sure.
It's a man. Okay.
Thank you for. But yeah, this is a male model, and
I couldn't tell from the pelvis just quite,
I'll tell you. So yeah, Osteo Nuevo. I had an osteo. Here's the joke. I had an osteo before, and but he totally disarticulated. Thank you. He did. He fell apart, and I got another. And I love the name. It's so good. So I named him Osteo Nuevo.
That sounds like a Latin lover to me.
So osteo actually has 2 deflated cortisol balls to represent the 2 hemidiaphragms. By the way, if any of your listeners like to teach anatomy, the cortisol balls are a great substitute for the diaphragm, and they just live in there. It's so great. So we have a fascial connection to the psoas major muscle from the respiratory diaphragm. It's called the medial arcuate ligament. So you have 2 very strong fascial zippers that connect the diaphragm to a muscle called the quadratus lumborum, which is a big low back muscle that's here. And then we have a connection to the psoas, which runs from the lower thoracic spine on some people, but it goes all the way up to the first lumbar vertebra. And then it strings its way into each of the lumbar vertebra and their discs, or more appropriately, it's connecting onto the skin around these bones known as the periosteum. That's a deep connective tissue layer. And then the muscle floats in front of the pelvis for a moment, and then it attaches to the high inner thigh at a little lump here on the femur called the lesser trochanter. And so this muscle is intimately sewn on top of the lumbar spine. And when we lay down, the muscle is completely lengthened by your supine position on the floor, by laying your back on the floor.
That muscle is the psoas, correct?
Yeah. And so we're going to address psoas here, not the quadratus lumborum so much. This is the muscle's length. And so when we lay down in a resting position, with our back on the floor, the muscle is pulled long, and the actions of breathing as the diaphragm goes down and up and down and up are going to have a little bit of a pulling and lengthening effect on the psoas where the overlap is. But one of the things that tends to happen when we're in one static position for a very long time is, even when you're asleep in bed, you move positions many times throughout the night. But when we're stuck in that lengthened position, some of the resting tone in the psoas can get triggered by the activities of breathing, and the muscle may want to start to shorten. And when it wants to start to shorten, it will, because of its attachments on the lumbar spine, it will start to create an extension pull on the lumbar spine. The lumbar spine will start to get shortened. This is why, when shavasana go past 20 minutes, a lot of people get a very deep low back ache. So this is even irrespective of the breathing mechanics going on. It's just that it's the brain, that brain muscle connection. The muscle's fatigued. It's starting to try to protect itself. It wants your body to move over onto the side. It just wants you to change positions. And so my suspicion is, I don't know everything that's going on in all that breath community, but if you're laying past 20, 30 minutes, you may start to get a deep backache. But if I can bend my knees and decrease the full pull of the psoas, so by bending the knees, I end up passively shortening the muscle. And it's slack. And then I'm not going to feel that obnoxious pull on my lumbar spine and then end up getting that low back ache. So that's really the simple recommendation, is just bend the knees, put a couple of pillows underneath that, or if you're in a spare space, you knock the knees together, and this is, in the physical therapy space, this is called constructive rest position or hook line position. In my book, I call it rest position. It's just more comfortable.
Yeah. What? I remember I was talking. I think it was Mike Nelson. You know Dr. Mike Nelson?
No, I don't.
He was doing some cadaver work, and he was telling me this, in that, you look in most anatomy books and you have the psoas and then you have the diaphragm. And then what he discovered was with some of the cadavers he was looking at, that it just really kind of blended in. This idea that these are separate muscles is actually, it's not well understood. And I went to school for kinesiology, and I understood them as separate things. And he brought to he's like, no, they're pretty much just kind of like, the psoas kind of becomes the diaphragm. And then that brought to my attention of, like, a tight psoas could be impacting your breath. And by working on the psoas specifically, all of a sudden you get into that zone 1 breath much more easily.
Yeah. I'm trying to find I have I have so many illustrations, anatomy illustrations in the book. This isn't the one I was looking for, but this it's an intimate connection, and you can think of the psoa as almost like it's like a guy wire, right, on the parachute of the diaphragm. And so this is one of the reasons why I mean, there are lots of neurological reasons for whole body pain to do breathing exercise and breathing practice. But if I have hip pain, I may also want to look at how I'm breathing to help that diaphragm psoas relationship, and also the diaphragm quadratus lumborum relationship, because we can't forget that this entire pelvis, this pelvis is hooked to the diaphragm via the quadratus lumborum, right? So we have two of these quadratus lumborums. So we can think of this like hook from the diaphragm into the top of the pelvis, and that's going to say a lot about our pelvic position. But then there's also, I love the mechanical relationships. There's also the diaphragm and the transversus abdominis. The transversus abdominis wraps around like a cummerbund. It's your deepest abdominal layer. But the diaphragm and the transversus abdominis are not separate structures. They're only separate when I pull the rib cage away. They're in the same fascial layer. Like they are literally sewn together. I have to use a knife to make a different transversus abdominis there. They're in the same fascial layer, but I have horizontal fibers of the transversus abdominis and I have vertical fibers of the respiratory diaphragm, but they're in the same cloak, in the same depth within the body. So, and this is all mapped out in the book. So then you can understand this like abdominal training and the responses of the respiratory diaphragm. This diaphragm is a skeletal muscle. It is skirt steak. It's not like some just a different tissue. It is myo. It is muscle in there. And even though it's running on automatic most of the time, we have to think of the importance of the diaphragm as a skeletal muscle for its muscular relationships to these other muscles, in terms of force production, in terms of how we train, but also these fascial relationships in terms of like how it's pulling us off in this direction or the other direction because of its force generation. Anyway, there's a lot to think about. Dude, I'm going to say my book one more time.
I love it.
Like literally wrote 480 pages about it in this book because I'm obsessed.
I love it. Yeah, the one big thing I'm getting from this conversation is and reminded of is it's all connected. And it's surprising ways.
Yeah.
To bring this all together really quick, as we come
do.
to the end, I wanted to touch on the 5 Ps. If you could break down the 5 Ps of recovery really quick, as we come to the end.
You've like totally read the 5 Ps are my favorite thing. So the 5 Ps are it's really a programming model too. If you know the 3 zones and you understand the 5 Ps, you can really help your people with their breathing mechanics and their relaxation response. So these are the 5 Ps of the parasympathetic nervous system. If you're trying to help foster the relaxation response in your people, the first P is perspective. And so that's a mindset thing. That is a top-down invitation to the rest of the body. So, for example, one of the mindset, I have hundreds of them in the book, but one that I use with new students is my breath is home. My breath is home. And so that's a really fun one to meditate on. The second P is place. In order to relax completely, in order to have deep physiological relaxation, you need to be in a safe place. And so safety is very subjective. One person's safety is not somebody else's, but ideally you're in a place that doesn't have a lot of noises and distraction, that you are able to control the light so it's not bright and shiny, and it is relatively quiet, right? So the place is safe. Your third P is is position. So the third P is position, and position has to do with taking advantage of the baroreceptor reflex. So in terms of position, we generally are going to relax better when we're congruent with gravity. So when we're in a reclined position or in a gentle slope, that is, your pelvis is a little bit higher than your heart, higher than your head. So picture this, you're laying in this constructive rest that we described earlier with your knees bent. You lift your pelvis up, you put a Lacrosse ball underneath your sacrum, or you put a yoga block underneath, or a couple of books, so that your pelvis is slightly higher than your heart, higher than your head and neck. And what that does is it creates a blood cascade. So of course your heart continues to pump, but your blood follows the rules of gravity. And so when you're in that little bit of upside down position, blood is starting to rush really fast towards your brain via the carotids on the side of the neck. And inside your carotid arteries, you have these pressure sensors known as baroreceptors that are coiled with the vagus nerve. And when these baroreceptors start to feel that too much blood is coming to the brain, and the brain has this blood-brain barrier. It is a very precise amount of blood can be allowed in there at one time. So too much blood is coming to the brain. Alarm goes off. The baroreceptor reflex ends up slowing down the heart rate, narrowing, vasoconstricting all over the body, and slowing down the breath pace so that only the right amount of blood is going to go through those straws on the side of your neck. So that's the baroreceptor reflex, and we can get that just with position. So we do this a lot in my work. So we've got perspective, place, position. The fourth P is pace of breath. We talked a lot about pace of breath. Slow your breath down. Become aware of your breath and slow it down. And then the fifth P is palpation. And the palpation has to do with strategic placement of self-myofascial release balls, the role model balls, in different places on your body that are going to tease you into a wonderful parasympathetic response. So those are the 5 Ps.
Awesome.
I love it. Jill, this has been fantastic. I just want to say thank you so much. You've changed Mike's life, and now incorporating these practices, I'm sure myself and all the listeners are going to have the same benefit as well. So thank you for taking the time today.
Oh, it was so much fun talking to you.
I'm going to recap some of what you said along the way because I take notes during the show. And just a quick recap of there are seasons in life, and this is speaking to performance. A lot of high performers out there, they know what it's like to white-knuckle their goals into existence, but your body's going to pay the price. So understanding when that season is done, and it doesn't have to hurt to work. Come on now. I'm going to say that again. It doesn't have to hurt to work. Soft is supreme. Talking about the Lacrosse balls here, and Fascia Lasagna, layers upon layers. It is everywhere, all over the body, rolling and breathing into your balls to create shear and lubricate the fascia. Everything is connected and anchored in fascia tissue. So make sure not only are you hydrated, but you are rolling and you are creating shear to help with that lubrication. And interoception. How good are you at feeling your body's inner state? How aware are you of your inner state? And then the zones of respiration. Zone 1 into the hips, into the deep breathing, into the diaphragm. Zone 2 is the rib cage expanding sideways. Zone 3, the shoulders, the neck, the face, the shock response. And then breathing likes to happen in secret. Gets a little shy, so it takes time to develop the skill and use tools as a cheat code. You got to have balls. And I'm talking about Lacrosse balls, tools that will help you get into the flow. Low and slow, and I'm not talking about barbecue. I'm talking about breathing. Slow, deep breathing is the way to go. And the 5 Ps of recovery: perspective, place, position, pace, palpation. Jill Miller, did I miss anything?
You're amazing. You're like not even using AI. This is just natural note taking. I want people to take notes of Ted taking notes. That's how you take notes.
Shorthand notes. Well, thank you so much to the audience. Thank you for making it to the end, Mike.
One thing. Where should somebody, if they want to get into your stuff, where should they start? What's the first book or resource?
Oh, so, I kept talking about Body by Breath, and I have another book. It's called The Role Model. And that's my first book. And all the balls really fall under this umbrella of role model balls. My website is Tune Up Fitness. So tuneupfitness.com is the website. I teach worldwide, but I also have an online classroom called Move, Breathe, Roll, where every week there's a new class, and also there's some mentorship involved with that if you choose to do that, so that I can really help people with their curiosities and challenges all over the world. And this includes everyday people as well as clinicians. And then you can find me on Instagram at the Jill Miller. We also have a number of competency courses that I teach on the role model, Body by Breath, as well as Yoga Tune Up. Those are my 3 competency courses. And there are trained people with those competencies who live and exist all over the planet. And you can find people in your zip code by going and looking in our teacher directory. So there are people to work with in person if online work is not your jam. And those courses come up cyclically. There's a role model training coming up in March, which I'd encourage people to, if they're really interested in the science of fascia, that's the course to take. And then, of course, the books, Body by Breath, The Role Model. And then for the really science interested people, I did contribute to a medical textbook on fascia called Fascia, Function, and Medical Applications. And I wrote a book on I wrote a chapter on self-myofascial release in that book. And that's the one to get if you're really interested in clinical application of fascia concepts.
There you go. Thank you so much.
We'll have that in the show notes. Jill, you've been amazing. That's Mike. I'm Ted. And if you want to have a conversation around this pod, don't forget to check out the school community to find more. Catch you guys next time.